I decided to make some better handles for these cheap files. I bought the set for around $7 and expected their lifespan to be limited to that immediate project. However, they've proved to be more useful and have stuck around. I wanted to keep my mind off of something, so a simple project like this was ideal. I started out by removing the plastic handles. They came off easily with a twist of my locking pliers. There are a number of ways to mount and drill out small spindle pieces like this on your lathe, and I'll show you two of them. The first way is using a scroll chuck. If you don't have small pen jaws, you can turn a small tenon that is captured right in the center where a woodworm screw usually attaches. You don't get the benefit of the dovetailed chuck jaws, but it does hold. You do have to be sure to keep your knuckles away from the jaws, as there's not a lot of clearance. They stick out farther than the piece you're actually working on, and if you let them, they'll bite you. Ouch. The second way doesn't require a chuck at all, and I'll show you that in just a moment. To drill out the handle without a Jacob's chuck, I first made a small recess in the center of my piece. Using locking pliers, I held the drill bit and slowly worked it in. It's important to back out the bit in order to clear out the waste. For this particular use, the depth wasn't critical, but otherwise a piece of masking tape on the bit lets you know when to stop drilling in. Using the roughing gouge and then over to my skew chisel, I brought the piece down into approximately a teardrop shape. I like using the skew for spindle pieces whenever I can. Using a planing cut and rolling out beads will give you fantastic surfaces just right off the tool. The sandpaper equivalent to a well-executed planing cut with a sharp skew chisel can easily be around 400 grit. The payoff to learning this tool is absolutely tremendous, but it can be frightening to the uninitiated. Find a mentor, take a skew skills class, study the tool, practice, and of course, most importantly, don't give up on it when you get a catch. I'd made 3 shallow V cuts with the skew for decoration and used a wire burner to add more detail to it. The second way to mount small spindle pieces like this is to turn part of the wood to match the taper on your lathe. The easiest way to do this is to make a small taper template jig using 3 pieces of scrap wood. Simply lay down a drive center onto one piece and sandwich it on either side with smaller pieces of scrap. Glue these pieces on, and now you can turn a piece of wood to match the spindle's taper without having to constantly take it off, check it, remount it, or mess around with calipers. Using a wooden mallet, just tap the taper in and you're all set to go. Be mindful of any cuts that push directly out from the headstock, as that might wiggle it a little bit loose. But if it fits nice and snug, you'll have very few problems. I like this method because you don't have to worry about clearance from chuck jaws, and it's very quick to set up once you have the taper template made. The only real downside is the wood inside of the taper isn't usable for the project, so it's not an ideal solution for exotic, expensive, or otherwise weird woods. But it is a rather elegant solution. After finishing up the handles, I used some fine grit sandpaper just to kind of clean up around where I had parted it off from the lathe. After wiping off the dust, I simply used a coat of mineral oil. These are working tools, so an elaborate finish is not necessary. The oil gives this alder wood a nice feel, and it really emphasizes the grain pattern. After letting the oil soak in for a couple of minutes, I put the files into their handles. They've got a pretty decent pressure fit, but if they wiggle around too much during use, I'll think about using CA glue or epoxy or something like that to secure them. Once you start making tool handles on a lathe, it is easy to start looking for other things that need their handles replaced. Files, chisels, awls, screwdrivers, turning tools, power tool levers and knobs, they're all begging for this upgrade. Serving spoons, whisks, and other kitchen implements are also great candidates. Thanks very much for watching Wood Frontier. I've got a new woodworking video each month, so punch that subscribe button to make sure that you see it. Also, feel free to let me know in the comments if there are any specific builds that you want to see or questions that you have. I'll see you next time, and keep on turning.